Hey everybody, welcome to segment 3. Now if you remember in segment 1 we talked about hardware that you could select. If you want dedicated hardware for like a Minecraft server for your Minecraft initiative back in your school district, we talked about possibilities for selecting hardware. And if you do have hardware identified that you want to have dedicated to your Minecraft experiments, then the next thing we talked about is how to go out and get a free operating system for your hardware called Linux, and specifically Ubuntu Linux. And what we did in segment 2 is we actually, not only did we download Linux, the Linux installer, but we also sort of wrote it to a USB flash drive and then used a utility called Live USB Creator to create a bootable USB drive that we're now going to install Linux onto our hardware. Now you might be using a different computer. This is the Intel NUC that we featured in our first segment. If you have a different computer, that's fine. It might look a little different than what you're about to see, but the concept is the same. I think you're going to be okay because conceptually there's nothing major going on. Now I do have my I do have my computer hooked up. An important thing when you install Linux is to make sure you have internet access during the time of install, because that's what's going to allow you to install the updates as you're installing Linux. It's good because it picks up all the device drivers and all the things that it needs to talk to your specific hardware. So having an internet connection is kind of a big deal there. And then now my USB drive, I'm just going to plug that into a free USB slot. Here I have a couple on the front of this Intel unit. And now the next thing I'm going to do, and we're going to talk about this, of course I'm going to turn the computer on. The first thing I want to do, though, is I want to get into something called the BIOS of this computer. That's BIOS, Basic Input Output System. And I'm not going to get terribly technical here, but the BIOS is basically responsible for, from the time that I turn the computer on and the computer kind of wakes up, realizes that it's on, and then the computer needs to then go do something, right? So the BIOS kind of handles that transition from the time you turn the computer on. Usually the process is turn the computer on, computer wakes up, says, oh, I have a hard drive. And on the hard drive then says, oh, I have an operating system, and then begins booting into the operating system. That's really an oversimplified explanation as to what BIOS is for. What we're going to do is we have to configure the BIOS of this device, your computer, my computer, to make sure that it's aware that there's a USB drive that it can boot from. And if we don't do that, then the machine's never going to be aware in that process. It's never going to be aware that the USB drive is a possibility to which it can boot. So we're going to have to do that. Now, I know on this device, on most PC-based systems, even if it doesn't say in the startup screen, when you first turn on the machine, if you tap F2, just kind of keep tapping your F2 key, that's going to tell it, hey, I need to get into the setup for BIOS. And that's what we want to do here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the machine on, and as soon as I turn it on, I'm going to be tapping the F2 key to try to signal to it, hey, I want to get into these BIOS settings, Basic Input Output System. And I'm doing that now. And what will ultimately happen is yep, there we go. And on this, it's really easy on this Intel. Your system is probably the F2 key that gets you into BIOS. And now here I am. Now the Intel Visual BIOS is highly stylized. It looks really pretty. Yours might not be this. Even newer systems don't have this nice of a BIOS page. But what you're looking for is basically your boot options. Okay, your boot options, and you kind of have to search around. I had to search around a little bit to find it on here. This menu interface up here has an advanced feature. And if I scroll down on the advanced feature, I'll see boot. You're looking for something that obviously changes the boot settings of your computer. All right, and that's what I've got going on here. And as I look at this, again, you're just going to have to read whatever interface you kind of come up with. A Google search or two could help you out if you get stuck. But I noticed over here on these tabs, I have boot configuration. Again, you might have something different on yours. Just kind of think about the concept here. I'm getting into the boot configuration and boot devices. Notice how there's a check mark next to USB. That's a good thing. That means I want this computer to consider the USB drive as a possibility for booting. If it were unchecked like that, I would want to make sure that it's checked. And basically what you're looking to do is you're looking to do the conceptual equivalent on whatever computer you're using. Make sure that it's aware that the USB drive is a bootable device. That's kind of like the key thing here. And mine's good. This looks good. The other thing that you have to do in BIOS is make sure you just don't exit or restart your computer. Make sure that you save. And on mine, again, you just have to look at the interface to see what you need to do. But mine is F10 for save and exit. So I'm going to hit F10 and I'm going to save and exit. Now, the next thing that's going to happen after I save and exit is I'm going to want to get into the boot menu of my computer. Typically, if you have the boot order set up and everything like that, as a matter of fact, the one thing that I can do to kind of force the issue here is I have a BIOS that allows me to boot USB devices first. Check that out, boot USB devices first. So if there's a bootable USB drive, boot that before you even go into the to the hard disk. I'm going to check that. That's going to do it for me. I'm in good shape now. If I save that and I reboot my machine, it's going to see that USB drive. It's going to see that the Ubuntu installer is on that USB drive. It's going to boot right to it. I'm still going to show you one additional step. If you're having difficulty, if you have the USB enabled and that's a boot device on your computer, because everybody's computer is going to be a little different, you might not know how to change the boot order to get the USB drive to boot before the hard disk. So the frustration there is you'll keep restarting your machine, your USB will be plugged in, and it just keep booting to the hard drive and always skip over your USB. I'm going to show you how you can actually really force the issue with the computer if you get desperate. And that is, remember how we hit F2 to get to the BIOS screen here? What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a different keystroke, and this one's really different across computers. Sometimes it's F8, sometimes it's F10, sometimes it's F12. Looking on my screen here for the Intel NUC when it was starting up, it actually ends up being F10. So I'm going to tap F10. What that's going to do, it's going to load the boot menu, and I'm going to select the USB drive. Now, if everything's configured properly in your BIOS, you should just be able to restart your computer after you save and exit, and it'll just boot right to the USB drive. But if you're having difficulties, I'm going to show you how you can really force the issue here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit F10 to save and exit. That's going to restart my machine, and as soon as it restarts, I'm going to be tapping F10 to get into the boot menu. So here's my save. I'm going to save and exit. Yeah, go ahead, save. Now it's restarting. Now I'm going to tap F10 to enter the boot menu. Now here's my boot menu. Now notice it's a lot less elegant, but it comes up and says, hey, you got two options to boot from here. You can boot from the hard drive, which is that first option, or you can boot from USB. And I'm going to select to boot from USB, and that's automatically going to boot right into the USB key that we've prepared with the Linux installer. So I'm going to go ahead and select for that and hit enter. You're going to get this purple screen with like this little person object and a keyboard. That means that this is you're booting up the Linux installer off your USB drive. This is exactly where we go. This is good. This is all very good. If you see any of this stuff that we're seeing right now, you're going to have an Ubuntu logo that sort of has a little progress bar, and it's going to take you to some of your first options for configuring the Ubuntu operating system. Okay, so the first screen that comes up that we can actually do anything with is this install window, and this comes up right after, of course, you boot from the USB drive. And I'm going to select English as my language. That'll work for today. And you can do this, try Ubuntu. You can read up about what that's all about. But what we're out to do here is actually install Ubuntu on our system. We're going to click Install Ubuntu. We've got to make sure that we have at least 5.9 gigs of available drives. We should have that. Is connected to the internet. That's great. I think this is a big thing here. Download updates while installing. So if there's anything that it needs to go out and do, go ahead and let it do it. And it doesn't hurt at all to install the third-party software for some MPEG decoding technology. That's fine. No big deal there. We're going to go ahead and, this is optional. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to check it because I can. I'm going to click Continue. And this is what we've been saying all along, folks. Very important here. There's other things that we can do, but this is going to be erase the disk and install Ubuntu. All right, so whatever's on this machine is going to be wiped out, and we're going to have a fresh install of Ubuntu Linux version 13.10. Now there's a couple optional things. Encrypt the new installation for security. That's optional. I'm not going to do it here just because the encryption and all that, this just adds another layer of another potentially confounding variable. So I'm not going to do the encryption. Use LVM. Basically with LVM, it's called logical volume management. You can do partition resizing and all this jazz. There's no good reason why not to do this. If you run into troubles or if you read anything that tells you not to do it because of a certain problem that you're having, that's fine. You don't need LVM, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. This something else is just if you want to resize partitions yourself, you really should know what you're doing before you get into that something else option. So we're going to erase the disk and install Ubuntu, use LVM, that's fine. Again, very optional. I'm going to click Install Now. Now while the installation is happening, it might give you some other options to configure. For instance, time zone. Mine came up automatically correct. I'm in Eastern Standard Time, so New York is my city of reference. That's fine. I'm going to click Continue. For the keyboard layout, here we're given, English keyboard layout's going to work for me. So English here and English there. That looks good, and I'm going to click Continue. Now it's going to want some identification information to set up an account on the computer we're installing Ubuntu Linux. I'm going to call this. I'm going to say that my name is the is Minecraft Server 01. You can call this whatever you want. And then your computer name, I'm just going to make the computer name the same as what I put up in the your name block, and that's perfectly fine. A username, it can all be the same actually. So what I might do here is just put Minecraft Server 01 as the username. You can pick this all, these are options. You call it Bert. I don't care. But it should be descriptive concerning what the machine's actually up to. Requiring a password to log in is not a bad idea. And what I'm going to do is actually put in a password for this. You put in whatever secure password you use. Like with all password security, uppercase, lowercase, alphanumeric, numbers and letters, maybe even a special character as well. That'll work for making a secure password. And mine's fair, so obviously I could probably be a little more secure in mine. Green check mark means that they're both the same. Require a password. I'm not going to encrypt my home folder. It's not necessary for what I'm doing here. It's a Minecraft server, for crying out loud. It should be okay. And I'm going to click Continue. The next one here is all about this Ubuntu One. It's sort of like this software service. They want you to create an account for it. I never do. You can. I don't mess with it. I'm just going to click in Log In Later. This has absolutely no bearing on the context of setting up a Minecraft server in Linux, so I'm just going to log in later. So this actually starts off the installation process. You can see down here sort of a status of the things going on. There's going to be files that it retrieves both locally and over the internet because, again, we said, hey, it's okay to go out and update download the updates as you install, so that's good. So this will take some time. It will be somewhat dependent upon your internet bandwidth, again, because we said that they could download any Linux updates while it's installing. And after some time, the installation is going to be complete, and you're going to have an installation complete window. You just click Restart Now, and when you do that, you got a fresh install of Linux on the device you're using for your MinecraftEDU server. Now, after your restart from installation, you're going to come to a login screen on your Minecraft server. So just go ahead and put in the password that you established when you were doing the installation. Now, the first thing we're going to do now that we're back into our Ubuntu Linux install is we're going to install something called Java. You may be familiar with Java, you might not be, but essentially what happens here is that Minecraft is completely written in the programming language known as Java, and for good reason. At least in theory, when you write software in Java, it can run on any platform, and Minecraft actually does a really good job of that. So I can run this, you can run Minecraft on a PC, Linux, or a Mac. It doesn't really matter. And because it's written in Java, it'll run on all those platforms. Now, but the thing is, in order to run a Java program, you have to have Java installed on the system. Ubuntu Linux, and actually just about every platform out there, doesn't really have Java installed by default. It's not part of the installation process that we just did. So we have to go and give it a few specific instructions to install Java. And it looks a lot worse than it is. It's not that bad at all. In the upper left-hand corner, if we go to this feature. If you go ahead and click on this feature in the upper left-hand corner with the Ubuntu symbol, you can actually search your computer for different programs. And there's a certain program we need to get to. We're going to need to type some things into something called a command prompt. And to get to a command prompt, we need to use something called terminal. So notice how I just start typing terminal, and my terminal comes up here under applications. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And that's going to open up this window, and it's like, oh man, this looks technical. It's not that bad. So we're going to actually type a few things here. What I'm going to do is I've got a command I'm going to type that's going to go out and say, hey, I want to install Java onto my Ubuntu Linux machine. Here's what that command is going to look like. It's going to be sudo, S-U-D-O, apt-get space install. So that's sudo space apt-get with a hyphen space install openjdk-7-jre. Holy cow, what is all that mess? We're going to glance over the details here, but just sudo means I'm running this as a super user, which gives me the proper permission to do the install that I'm trying to do. apt-get is a feature of Ubuntu. It's basically a package manager, and you're going to install OpenJDK, that's the Java Developers Kit, version 7. At the time of this recording, 7 is the most recent version. And with Java, you want to make sure you get the most recent version of Java, because if you don't, it's a huge security risk. So we're going to grab version 7 of the Java Runtime Environment. That's what the JRE stands for. So all we're really going to do, the big thing for you to know is sudo apt-get install openjdk-7-jre and hit enter. Now, it's going to ask you for your password. That's the password that you set up during install. And because you're doing something that requires administrative privileges, you put in the password and hit enter. Now, Ubuntu is going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to do all these things for you. Are you cool with that? And in this particular instance, because we know what we're doing, we're going to answer Y for yes. Go ahead and continue. And now it's downloading and installing Java. And we're going to need this for MincraftEDU, so that's good. You can see a lot of things scrolling through on your screen. Just know that you're not blowing anything up, that this is completely required to do what we want to do. Ultimately, it's going to finish up, look very familiar, very similar to this, and you're going to come back to a command prompt. At your command prompt, just type in exit. And that's it. You've installed Java on your Linux system. So between installing Linux and throwing Java on your machine, you're ready to go. In the next segment, we're going to talk about what do you need to purchase for MincraftEDU? Where do you go to purchase it? And then once you do purchase it and you have the thing that you've purchased, what do I do with it? All right, so all that's coming up in the next segment. Take care, be well.